And now it is my pleasure to welcome our first panelist of today, Fumi Michihata, researcher in culture and food industry, comparing Japan and other countries, and representative foodbiznet.com, and Chieko Nakabasami, professor of international tourism management at Toyo University, researcher in multicultural communication and solidarity tourism, that will be giving a speech called Acculturation and Rediscovery in Japanese Food Culture. So please.
Okay, buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Can you share our presentation? Can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet. あれ、何どうしたらいいんやろか。
Sharing screen.
Okay.
Just
screen. あれデスクトップ。あれどうしたらいいんや。あれ画面の共有。
Yes. Now we are seeing the screen.
それでどうかな。あれ Just a moment, please.
Yes.
ありゃ。あれ少し。It doesn't work, so sorry. あれなんでいかないんや。
Should we use our presentation?
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, just a minute then.
Okay.
You will just tell us when to do the next one, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's get started. Buongiorno. I'm Fumi Michihata. I'm happy to join this symposium and raise thanks for Foscar University and Chieko Sensei. She will talk after my presentation. I have been engaged in researching and consulting for food industry and marketing area for around 25 years. Oh, not the first slide, please. After graduated from a Faculty of Agricultural Science at Kyoto University, now I'm joining from my old traditional house in Kyoto. Today, I will talk about acculturation and rediscovery in Japanese food culture from aspects of history, economy, and the change of society. Well, today's topics in the 5 themes described on this slide. First is acculturation of Japanese food for culture with adopting Western culture. The second is a westernized and modernized force affected Japanese food culture. Before my presentation, I might explain introduction of foreign culture in Japanese history at bottom of this slide. As you know, Japan is located in the Far East, the end of Asia. Moreover, Japan is surrounded by sea, so that it does not have any border on land with other countries. In 13th century, Marco Polo from Venice introduced Japan as a country of gold, although he could not come to Japan. Such a geographical factor drastically affected on our culture. In addition, isolation policy in Edo era affected more drastically on food culture. Edo era was a peaceful period without no war, so original culture such as ukiyo-e, kabuki, and etc. boomed. Vice versa, at the end of Edo era, after releasing country for foreigners, Western culture was welcomed and appreciated in the public, led by the government. This was the first trigger of acculturation with a Western culture. Japan happened to the next opportunity of encountering a foreign culture, which was the end of the World War II. The United States occupied the Japanese government and economy. American culture introduced and invaded. The third trigger is the current policy of immigration. Those are the three triggers of culturation of our history. Today, I will the first one and the second trigger, and move on to the next themes. Sorry, the the third is a long recession before COVID-19 have changed people's value. The fourth is a pandemic revealed a relationship and offer an opportunity to think about sustainability. At last, I introduced the two case studies of relationship between city and producers in the suburbs in Kyoto. Yeah, next slide, please. Now I will show you our current diet. What do you imagine about the Japanese diet? Japanese dishes, a tempura, sushi, or ramen? Washoku, an ideal image of a Japanese dishes on the left, was recognized UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2013 for its seasonal ingredient and well-balanced nutrition. However, almost Japanese do not have such meal. Sometimes we eat such washoku at a ryokan, Japanese style accommodation, or restaurants. At home, we eat so many kinds of dishes on the right. These are our usual dish. Very acculturation style. Fried chicken, Hamburg steak, eh, that is similar to a big meatball, ramen, pasta, pizza, and rice, and sometimes miso soup on our usual table. Some latest marketing data shows the most popular dish at home. The number one is a Western cuisine, and the second one is Chinese. Italian cuisine is also the very popular. Pasta lunch, a set menu which consists of pasta, a little salad, and a beverage, is a best-selling item among the Japanese working women. In addition, Italian pasta is spread nationwide as frozen food by big food companies due to its easy cooking and saving price. Now, I might say Italian cuisine is one of our nation cuisine. A current Japanese diet is far from washoku. Ironically, heritage is a real heritage. Now, please, next slide. Let's look back on our history of our food culture. As for Japanese food culture, basic elements are water, sea salt, and rice or the other cereals due to geography and the climate. Now, Japanese staple is rice. Rice and the good water are made into sake, vinegar, miso, soy sauce, and other condiments through good skill of fermentation processing. These are the base of the Japanese cuisine. Our gastronomic sense still formed with these tastes. The first acculturation was triggered by the release of isolation at the end of Edo era. Before that time, I have mentioned too about a long time prohibition of a meat diet since introduction of Buddhism in the 6th century. Of course, so many exceptions existed. The people have been craving for protein and a fat diet. That is an important factor of acculturation. In about 300 years, Edo era commoner people developed original culture. Sushi, noodle, tempura, dining stools in city area. At last, releasing country for Westerners. Western culture rushed into original culture. For example, westernized architecture was built. Short hairstyle and a Western style hood were recommended. On the other hand, culture and religion of the local community were denied. And then even a government policy of abolish the Buddhism was introduced. Sukiyaki, beef braised with a soy sauce, or pork cutlet, tonkatsu, were becoming so popular in restaurants. At the same time, imperialism was also introduced to government. Japan proceeded to World War One and World War Two. Please, next slide. Next slide, please. Let's move on to the next stage. The second trigger of acculturation was the occupation of the United States and economic growth. After World War II, Japan happened to the good luck to grow economically. Income doubling policy succeeded so that the people could afford to buy home appliances, motor cars, and houses in suburbs. Businessman, housewife, and their children, a family was a unit of consuming. Families are becoming to spend more money and time for leisure along with much more salary. American culture, such as pop music, movie, and sport, etc., was introduced, especially to young generation. As for food culture, fast food, hamburger and Coca-Cola, fried chicken, and dining culture smoothly broke into Japanese diet. At that time, people were starving for nutrition, fat, sugar, and protein due to the defeat of the war. Eating habits have become Americanized and getting quite different from the Japanese authenticity. Please, next slide, please. Let's move on the current situation. The economic growth had ended in the 1980s. After that, Japan entered a long-term recession until now. More women work for the salary and self-actualization. Family size become more smaller and single household increase. People value personal privacy and communicate less heartily. This graph shows how many wives were working from 1980 to 2018. The blue line indicated the number of couples, working husband and non-working wife. The red line indicated the number of couples, working husband and working wife. In about 30 years, the working wives has become majority. The next slide, please. In addition, a unit of a family has changed drastically. This graph shows how many persons consist of the household. Single household, as shown in the blue bar, increased. The family unit has become smaller. Within the city of Tokyo, average number of a household is under 2. Next slide, please. And relationship has fully changed. This graph shows how many persons want to help each other relationship at the office, relatives, and the neighbors. You could realize the relationship among people from 1978 to 2018 becomes more superficial. The next slide, please. The situation that I showed the last 3 slides has affected greatly on our diet. People give priority to their personal time, personal favorite, and personal dishes. It is not for family members to gather a table for dinner at the same time. More working wives need quick and easy process of home cooking. Ready meals and casual restaurant has become popular. As a result, almost half of food expense paid for restaurant and ready meal. This graph shows how much we pay for restaurant, including fast food. And the red line shows a ready meal. Cooking has been outsourced from home kitchen. The next slide, please. Let's move on the current situation with pandemic. Look back on the situation before COVID-19, our diet had become so personal. And almost people have forgotten the importance of relationship in families, neighbors, or friends. Also, diet consumers were too careless for the background of food chain, farming, fishing, and the environment. Pandemic has made the people reconnect each other and reconstruct relationship and discover the family, relative, and neighbors and the global environment. This graph shows a survey by the government. Younger generation, the 20s and the 30s, has become more conscious about marriage and move from the city area to suburbs. I'm sure the people will shift to new age. Next slide, please. At last, I will show two case studies of relationship between city and agriculture in suburbs in Kyoto. The first one is about sake. Fushimi area is the south of Kyoto, is famous for sake brewery, and Fushimi Inari, the famous for the sake shrine on this photo. The Shotoku Shuzo have brewed nice sake for near 400 years in Kyoto. Now they are trying to brew sake with the heirloom rice, a traditional species rice of Kyoto, produced by the farmer the northwestern area in Kyoto. It is not easy to cultivate heirloom species rice, but brewery and farmers collaborate each other to produce more fantastic sake. This sake is sold not only on domestic market, but also the Asian market. Next slide, please. Let me talk on the second case study of Kameoka area, which is located behind Arashiyama, the famous scenery of Kyoto. The next slide, please. Their activity is so unique. Farming is very active. Good vegetable and meat are sold for the market of the Kyoto and the other area. They developed some products that made with the rice and other cereals to cookies or some cakes. In addition, they devised the traditional indigo, Japan blue. Indigo is very good dyeing for textile. They developed its use for eating and drinking. They have just developed indigo tea. Its benefit for health is analyzed at a local university. The university students support these activities, sometimes as a scientist and sometimes as interns. These projects might be developed into agritourism, the historical tourism, or the scenic tourism, which give more entertainment for tourists. People in community collaborate to create more fun themselves and for visitors. Now the number of coming tourists decreased due to COVID-19, but they make good effort to welcome to their town. These two cases are just a few little projects. Now so many local projects are going on nationwide in Japan. And the next slide is the last slide. Thanks for attention. Come and enjoy Kyoto, which Marco Polo introduced as a golden city. Now I'll hand over to the Chieko sensei. Thank you.
Thank you, Fumi sensei. So I'm Chieko Nakabasami from Toyo University in Tokyo. So now I'm a faculty of international tourism management. So I just conclude our talk. In this presentation, we introduce the history of the Japanese food culture from ancient times and explain the active acculturation of food by the Japanese people. It's interesting, the Japanese people have been incorporating outside diverse food cultures and integrating them into their own food culture to invent Japanized international food. Unfortunately, Japanese traditional dishes, washoku, have been disappearing. It's ironic that UNESCO has recently named washoku as an intangible cultural heritage. Since the 1970s, the Japanese food culture has been changing, and in the 21st century, Japanese traditional home-cooked dishes are on the verge of disappearing. Currently, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are forced to stay home, but ready meals are evolving instead of home-cooked dishes. On the other hand, in Italy, all family members keep getting together around the table to eat homemade dishes prepared by mama. Is it true? I believe. Japanese people should accept diverse food culture from overseas, as they have been doing, and at the same time, rediscover their traditional food culture. It's important that Chisan but it means local consumption by local people should be incorporated into future food businesses domestically and internationally. Okay, that's all for our talk. Thank you for our presentation. Grazie mille.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nakabasami sensei and Michihata sensei. Your panel was really interesting. It was about washokun and recent food culture in Japan. Really interesting. Thank you. I would like to invite the audience for some comments or questions.
That's me as usual. I have a question for both of you. I know there are many TV programs on culinary art or how to prepare dishes in Japan too, and also in Italy, as you can imagine. In Italy, they are stimulating a lot of homemade food, you know, homemade dishes. And what about Japan? Do you think Japanese people follows this kind of TV programs and are preparing more Japanese washoku dishes at home, or there's a different trend?
How about Fumi-san? Fumi
Okay.
sensei. Can you answer?
Yes, I can answer. Yeah, in the TV program, shows a lot of the gourmet, some restaurant and some dining situation. The Japanese consumers, the rather affected by the social media, Instagram, Facebook, or the recipe site. You know, the cookpad, the internet of the cooking and the recipe site that affected our younger generation. The program of the internet stimulated the younger consumers to cook at home.
Mm-hmm.
Or the public relation of the promotion by the food company at the supermarket is more effective.
But I'd like to follow her. But I think generally Japanese people, but particularly salarymen, business person, have no enough time to cook. So they are always busy. But in our talk, we were talking about stay home now, current situation in Japan. So we imagine, we are ready to cook. We want to cook by myself, but homemade. But no, the situation is different. So what we do? So telephone, Uber Eats, and okay, so carry our home to bento or deluxe ready meal. So a little sad, the situation, current situation.
After pandemic, that we go less often to go to supermarket. They take a long time in a home. They cook up with a family for a long time.
Yeah.
But
Thank you
from our
for your
image,
answer.
The
but from our
pandemic made us to stay home a long time and cooking for a long time.
So on the contrary, from our image in Italy, a big table. So whole family are sitting, and mama offers very delicious homemade dishes. So we are dreaming. Before we did, but now so we are seeking for it, but we can't. So it's very sad.
I'm afraid it's different in Italy too. Last year we were all preparing a lot of meals at home, you know, but now we are all so tired and bored of the situation, and we always, like you, order for any dishes, but yeah, for delivery, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, Nakabasami sensei and Michihata
Thank you.
sensei.
Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you very much for your interesting comments about your panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have time for another question? Or should I just write it down? As you prefer.
As you prefer.
So it's a very brief question. Well, first of all, thank you very much. It was very interesting and very insightful. And I had a very brief question about washoku. As you know, in 2013, it has been designated as an intangible cultural heritage.
Exactly.
And I think that this surely has some impacts on tourism. You mentioned something about domestic consumption as well before. And I wanted to know your impression. How did this washoku designation as a intangible cultural heritage impact the domestic consumption?
Maybe the general people is not affected.
Okay.
We expected. The government utilize intangible cultural heritage to the export our produce and product to the other countries.
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
The tool of the export promotion.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much for your answer and time.